this is not just a war on the battlefield. This is mainly an information war. And this war, of course, the West and Ukraine is winning so far with the help of the West.
Some NATO members said they too would like the Ukraine to join NATO. There are NATO soldiers engaged in military exercises in the Ukraine. Have we taken leave of our senses? Do we actually want to have a war with Putin? Because if we do, we're certainly going about it the right way. There should be a huge degree of guilt in this House about what provoked all of this in the first place, and we saw Western Ukrainians waving European flags, rioting, setting fire to things, and effectively staging a coup d'etat which brought down the Ukrainian president, which has led to this instability. Yes, you are the guilty people, and you refuse to accept it.
Нам только говорили, надо знак какой-то подать, что вот Россия действительно намерена пойти вот на решение этих вопросов мирным путем. Надо войска отвести от Киева. Отвели.
Such as Irpin and Brovary, these are places that have seen a lot of the intense fighting in recent weeks. The troops, Russian troops, have been withdrawing their units from there. It does seem as though the Russians are withdrawing units. They said they would do. They said they would be concentrating on the east of the country.
Через день они выбросили в помойку все договоренности. Сказал, да, мы были готовы, мы это упустили, поскольку приехал тогдашний премьер-министр Великобритании господин Джонсон и уговорил нас не реализовывать эти договоренности.
Того, коли ми повернулися зі Стамбулу, приїхав Борис Джонсон до Києва і сказав, що ми взагалі не будемо з ними нічого підписувати, і давайте будемо просто воювати.
Они же отказались от переговоров. Ну, напомню, в Стамбуле обо всем договорились. Ну, придурки, нет?
While the West ignores our interests and forbids Kiev from negotiating, it hypocritically calls on us to engage in some kind of negotiations. This looks simply idiotic. On one hand, they are forbidden to negotiate with us, and on the other hand, we are called to negotiations or hinted that we are refusing them. This is some kind of nonsense. We live in a sort of wonderland. First of all, they should start by giving Kiev the command to lift the ban on negotiations with Russia. Secondly, we are ready to sit at the negotiating table even tomorrow.
The situation is stabilized. We will be able to calmly develop these territories, helping you to strengthen the country as a whole. You and all the people who have endured deprivation. And in their hearts, in these territories, together with you for many years, sought to reunite with Russia. Thank you very much. I am told the results of the referendum and the people who nevertheless deduced such difficult conditions. And I continue to live, and this is the result. There is no desire to send anything, clean it, or add anything. If people speak out, that's how people say, I'll say, so we're here. And the result, of course, is more than convincing, and it is absolutely transparent about this result and not subject to any doubt. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, you know, maybe there would not have been this current conflict if I had tried to send history to Ukraine itself and in the West and to tear this history apart. If there was no glorification of those who collaborated with Hitler, with the fascists, and if there was no desire to revive this Nazism for me.
Russia was already signalling it was about to declare victory in the 4 referenda in eastern Ukraine.
They cannot be called a genuine expression of the popular will.
Voting is in progress. People are checking all of the passports and documenting everything, and then the ballots, as they're filled out, get put in this sealed ballot box. So here's some footage from some of the other locations so you can really kind of see the thousands of people that did vote here today. And again, this is just the first day of essential workers. So we've showed you what we can. Watch as much as you can from both sides so you can make an educated decision on what the situation is yourself. Don't just be spoon-fed by the Western mainstream media.
Я Александр Сергеевич Степанов, первый заместитель министра здравоохранения Херсонской области. Виктория Нундлова приезжала, вы знаете, да? Широкая поддержка, которую оказывают Соединенные Штаты в Украине. прямые заявления лидеров Соединенных Штатов о том, что мы уже воюем с Россией.
И ваше мнение, отношение к западной военной помощи Киеву, то есть как вы думаете, что это такое? И...
Ну, смотрите, если бы не было идеологической накачки 2014 года и ранее, если бы не поставлялись боеприпасы, то этой войны бы не было в принципе.
Где мы находимся сейчас?
Мы находимся в город Мелитополь, Запорожская область. Не хочется эту Украину.
И что произошло здесь сейчас?
Сейчас происходит референдум, голосование за вход в состав России, выход с Украины за вход в состав России. Настолько хорошо, люди православные, верующие, настолько хорошо, что даже некоторые думают, даже можно за это и умереть.
Строго в клетке, запаление вот ты молодец. Сегодня у нас торжественное мероприятие, можно так сказать, знаменательный день. Сегодня наконец-таки происходит то, чего мы ждали очень долгие, страдальные 8 лет. Сегодня у нас проходит референдум Российской Федерации. Очень долго ждали этого, очень мучительно это все было происходило, очень много жизней за это положили.
Ukraine unleashed a torrent of bombing all over Donetsk, killing 6 civilians, including 1 child, and injuring tens more. The Ukrainian shelling began in the morning, resumed in the afternoon, and continued heavily for another 2 hours in the evening. A deafening series of blasts throughout the city, terrorizing residents, targeting apartment buildings, civilian infrastructure, industrial buildings, a gas station, hospitals, schools, and a kindergarten. Locals say this was some of the heaviest bombing of Donetsk since 2014. The DPR's Ministry of Foreign Affairs reported such an unprecedented in terms of power, density, and duration of fire raid on the DPR capital was not recorded during the entire period of the armed conflict. One of the hospitals targeted was a busy maternity hospital with dozens of patients inside. Thankfully, the woman had taken shelter in the basement earlier when the shelling had started, so none of the women were killed, as they might have been if they had been in the delivery, gynecology, or other top-floor departments.
So that's the roof of the maternity hospital. So now we always hear these Western reports and claims about Russian airstrikes on hospitals, which turn out to be fabrications and hoaxes. But this is an actual shell fired by Ukrainian forces that came through that gaping hole in the roof you can see over here.
One of the very few corporate media mentions of the bombings distorts public opinion with its headline, Russian-backed separatists say. The Guardian, one day after the bombings, had the audacity to report a mere several Ukrainian strikes in the city, underreporting also the deaths and not at all mentioning the strike on the maternity hospital. Outrageously, some media even claimed on June 13th the bombings were conducted by Russia. Keep in mind, this is the same Western corporate-owned media that shrieked for weeks in March that Russia had bombed a maternity hospital in Mariupol, killing 3. The reality emerged that Ukrainian Nazi Azov forces had expelled the hospital staff in late February, so prior to the alleged strike, had militarized the hospital, and staged a hoax, including setting off explosives to incriminate Russia. One of the unwilling stars of the propaganda, a young woman named Mariana, later spoke out that there was no airstrike and that she and other women were filmed without warning by a journalist dressed in military uniform and wearing a helmet. Just as Western media's lack of reporting on Ukraine's bombing was to be expected, so too was the UN's weak-worded condemnation, with a spokesman for the Secretary General calling it extremely troubling. Conversely, at the time of the Mariupol hospital attack hoax, UN Secretary General emphatically tweeted, "Today's attack on a hospital in Mariupol, Ukraine is horrific." Even now, days after Ukraine's intense bombardment of Donetsk and targeting of the maternity hospital, Western media and politicians remain silent. The suffering and deaths of the people of Donetsk doesn't fit the Western narrative, so they misreport it or simply don't report it at all, enabling Ukraine to continue to commit war crimes.
And the Russians are down. It's the best money we've ever spent.
We are in the village of Spartak, which is a frontline village in the Donetsk People's Republic, or internationally known as the Donetsk region of Ukraine. Soldiers are coming up to put in their vote for the referendum. Now, these are the Donetsk People's Republic forces. These are not Russian army forces, but it said after this referendum, if it passes, Russia says the armies of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic are going to be turning over straight into the Russian army, and they'll be Russian soldiers. But for now, they're soldiers of the Donetsk People's Republic, People's Militia, as it's called. And we can see here they are giving their votes. It's a little bit different than normal elections because of the attacks, because people are afraid to go out to the streets, to see things on both sides of the line. Don't just be led by the Western mainstream media that wants to spoon feed you information. Sort through the information and the misinformation and have somewhat of an educated opinion.
With Ukraine, we can't have our future. We know that they hate us. If Russians have their own opinion, but Ukrainians understand what they see. Only news, yes, not from us, from people who are here. And we love our country, we love Donetsk, and we love Russia.
First of all, I want to reiterate that the West will never approve of a referendum that does not comply with a Western agenda. So that's number one. The West's opinion should be made irrelevant by the decision of the people to reunify with Russia. And that is the very strong message I received from all of the electoral committees that I spoke to, and the people, particularly the refugees in eastern Russia, in Ufa, that I visited. It's the opinion that they voiced. For them, this is their decision. They have lived under bombs, under some of the most appalling atrocities committed against them for 8 years. It is their decision to liberate themselves from an imposed Nazi regime that was imposed upon them in 2014 and has been committing crimes against them ever since and is controlled by the West. So the West has no say in this referendum other than to object to it, because finally the people are liberating themselves and rejoining Russia.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president, and as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose.
"151 persons were injured, among them 27 children. 4 people died, including 2 children. Washington and its allies foster a neo-Nazi regime in Kyiv and encourage their puppets in Kyiv to commit terrorist acts against civilians."
Навіть не цікаво послухати альтернативну думку. Їй по телеку сказали, що Бандера
по какому
зрадник.
телеку? Я історію учила.
Чому Бандера зрадник? Чому?
Потому що він був з нацистами, з фашистами.
Я теж з нацистами, з фашистами. От у тебе по телеку кажуть, що українці це нацисти і фашисти.
Закрой рот, я зараз телефон свій розоб'ю в дребезги.
Ну, ви бачите, русня. Пиздец. Я в ахуї, люди. Це піздець. Оце моя бабуля. Щоб ви розуміли, я військовослужбовець, доброволець, ходжу на ротації. Воюю за Україну.
this abhorrent crime where Washington is directly involved, not only by supplying the missiles, but also fully controlling their flight missions. The strike targeting civilians in Sevastopol will not go unanswered. There will be measures in response. The Russian Federation will continue to protect its people and its national security until no threat is posed by the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev that was breeded, raised and financed by the West.